Hi friends, we're back to read chapter 6 of Snot Stew. Can't wait to check into Kiki and see how everything's going for her. Last chapter she was getting a little bit more comfortable in her new environment. So let's see how she's doing now. Our focus question is going to be, why do you think Mother threw Kiki out of the house when she didn't do anything? And then our vocab words are trinkets and indignant. So let's see if we can find those words while we're reading. I learned a lot during the next few weeks. I learned that the barn where the Burkes live was called a house. My safe place was called the couch instead of the couch. The round things with long legs were tables, and there were lamps on them, where light came from. The Burkes had names for different rooms in the house, too. My couch was in the living room. They had the bedrooms for sleeping, a playroom for watching a machine called the TV, and a kitchen. The kitchen was my favorite place. That's where Mother and Sarah fed me. They had some dry, crunchy stuff that they called cat food. I didn't much care for that. Once a day, Sarah would open a can of real cat food. It tasted like meat. She would give me some in my bowl. It was good, but not nearly as good as stew. Things went pretty well in the Burkes' house. I liked my girl named Sarah. She was mine because I was hers. She would call me her cat. She would pet me and scratch me behind my ears. She talked to me real softly and was never mean to me. It made me purr and feel warm and toasty inside. Toby belonged to the boy named Ben. He and Toby liked to play. Ben would drag a string across the floor, and Toby would pretend it was a mouse and sneak up on it and pounce it. Ben would laugh and grab Toby and playfully rub his fur the wrong way. Toby would arch his back way up, like he was really mad. He'd kind of pounce sideways like he was going to get Ben. They would roughhouse and play for hours. Besides getting petted and rubbed and fed cat food and watching TV, Toby and his boy played rough boy games. I learned that there were some rules around the place. Mother didn't like us to climb up on her table in the kitchen to look at the plates. I guess she didn't want anybody looking at her plates except people things. If we did, she would yell at us and swat at us with her dish towel. Daddy didn't like us to sharpen our claws on the couch or chair or rug. But where is a cat supposed to sharpen his claws if not on stuff like that? Anyway, if we did, he would yell at us in his loudest, deepest voice. Once, he even swatted Toby with a newspaper. That scared me so much, I hid in my safe place under the couch for a whole night. There were also some things on shelves in the living room that Mother called trinkets. There were glass birds and statues of people dancing in pink glass bowls. It had flowers and stems carved into the side of the glass. So I found a vocabulary word, trinkets. So if we look at this word, Mother called trinkets. There were glass birds and statues of people dancing in pink glass bowls. It had flowers and stems carved into the side of the glass. So trinkets are like the little things that sit on the counters or on shelves that just make a house look pretty, but you don't really need them. So they're little trinkets. All right, let's keep reading. One day, Mother found us up there. We were just looking, but she started yelling and screaming and calling us all sorts of bad names. I took off from my safe place. She chased Toby all around the living room until he finally ran under the couch where I was. He was all puffed up and breathing hard, only he didn't want me to know how scared he had been. She isn't so tough, he said, slicking his fur down with rough tongue. She isn't so tough. I'll show her. Toby did show her too. The very next morning, he climbed back on the shelves and started prowling around. So prowling, think of like a jungle cat, like what a tiger or a lion might do when they're walking back and forth. Toby's been up there. Being up there must have startled one of Mother's birds because it flew off the shelf. The dumb thing couldn't fly, though, since it was made of glass. So all it did was fall on the floor. There was a loud crash, tinkle. Toby stood real still. I ran for my safe place. Then Mother came in. She knelt down to look at the poor dead bird. Her bottom lip quivered as she glared up at Toby, but before he could move, she grabbed him. So we understand the bird didn't fly because it was a fake bird. It wasn't a real bird, right? It was a glass bird. So I wonder what Mom is going to do to Toby. So stop and think about it. Share with the person next to you. What do you think Mom is going to do to Toby? What would you do to a cat who broke something that you loved? So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it and talk about it. Okay, let's get back to the story. Meow, he cried. All of a sudden, Mother came after me. Why, I don't know. I hadn't done anything. I had been under the couch the whole time. But she reached under anyway and grabbed me. She didn't have a good hold, so I started to crawl away. Her fingers slipped, but she caught my tail and held it firmly. She started pulling. I dug my claws into the carpet. It was no use. She pulled harder. I couldn't hang on. Why me? I meowed. Why me? Mother didn't pay any attention. Once I was out from under the couch, she grabbed me by the back of my neck. She held Toby and me both at arm's length, took us to the back door, and threw us out. My legs went stiff. I twisted and turned. Okay, so the question was, why do you think the mother threw Kiki out of the house when she did nothing wrong? So that's something you're going to want to answer. So you're going to want to go back to this part of the story to answer that question. Let's keep reading and see what happens to poor Kiki. Used my tail to straighten me out, and like a good cat, I landed on my feet. Toby landed next to me. He was all fuzzed up and looked rather indignant about the whole thing. The fur behind his neck was ruffled, so he gave a shake of his head. How dare you throw me out like some scrap of garbage, he growled. I'll show you. I marched right over to Toby and swatted him across his head with my paw. You won't show her anything, I growled. This is all your fault. You stay off that shelf. If she ever lets us back in that house, you better stay away from Mother's trinkets. So let's go back so we found another vocabulary word. So up here it says indignant. So he's acting indignant. So that means like when you're acting like you did nothing wrong and you don't understand why you're being punished. So when you look, he says, how dare you? So that's kind of like what indignant sounds like when you're looking at a quotation mark or a dialogue that would explain what a vocabulary word means. So he says, how dare you throw me out? But I like here where Kiki is starting to get a little bit tougher, right? So where she used to be shy and quiet, now she's sticking up for herself and telling him, you better not do that, right? So her character is changing a little bit. Let's keep reading. Toby just ruffled his fur and strutted off. I arched my back way up. I mean it, Toby. You understand? He flipped his tail. Well, while we're out here, he called over his shoulder, let's go explore. I was a little frightened of the outdoors, but I followed Toby. There were all sorts of neat things to see. There was a big oak tree by the back door. There were bushes to prowl around and rub my back on. There was dirt to roll in. There was even grass. I nibbled some of it. It didn't taste good, but it felt good on my tummy. Then Toby found a hole under a wood fence. Come on, he called, sticking his head through the hole. I bet there's a whole new world out there. Let's go explore too. So let's take a little break here. What do you think? Do you think that they should go through this hole in the fence, or do you think that they should stay in the Burks' yard? So I'll give you a couple seconds to stop and think. What do you think they should do? Okay, let's get back to the story and see if you're right. Wait, Toby, I meowed back.